Story 1. It really irks me when I hear people say orcas are actually dolphins, not whales. Although orcas are dolphins, all dolphins are toothed whales. Hence, all dolphins are whales, but not all whales are dolphins. Moreover, orca is not a term that is less offensive than killer whale. In fact, Orcinus orca roughly translates to demon of the sea. And anyway, it is unlikely that orcas would care about our human opinions. In all likelihood, they would be pleased to be called killer whales because they are such assholes. Super intelligent, badass, assholes. Story 2. Monosodium glutamate is sodium bound to glutamic acid. Glutamic acid is naturally found in foods like tomatoes and mushrooms. It's no less harmful than salt. And it's honestly less harmful because it's used much more sparingly. You can buy MSG at Walmart in a shaker. It's called Accent, and it's in the seasoning aisle. It's literally pure MSG. Use a little bit of it in your savory foods and you will be amazed at how much better they are. I understand how nerdy and counterculture it might sound to support MSG, but the misinformation and ignorance of the issue never fails to amaze me. Once I brought a few little vials of it to a co-worker who was curious about trying it. I had brought her a few that day because you literally have the stuff forever since you use so little of it. I gave one of the vials to the store manager and asked him if he ever wondered what pure MSG tasted like. He actually screamed at me, "Are you trying to kill me?" I mean, the guy thought I was dispensing poison. He literally sells the stuff on aisle 10. Story 3. Blacksmiths do not work with molten steel. Molten implies that the metal is a liquid, which it is not at any point in the forging process. Also, red hot isn't that hot. Red is the color where you usually want to stop hammering. I wish people would say white hot more because that is the hottest you can get the metal before it burns. Edit. It's ironic that the comments here have illuminated another misconception that bothers me. Sword making is not an impressive process. It's not even complicated from a standpoint of forging. Think about it for a moment. Everything a blacksmith makes begins as a bar. The less the final product resembles a bar, the more difficult it is to forge. Story 4. I'm a criminal lawyer. There's a lot to select from in terms of misinterpretations and misunderstandings of the law. I think the underlying issue is that law is about language and uses terms that every reasonably educated person is familiar with in a colloquial context. A lot of individuals think that they can figure things out themselves without realizing that specific terms have very specific meanings in a legal context. In terms of the law, I would say that my biggest pet peeve is the use of freedom of speech or expression. The term varies by jurisdiction. To suggest that there should be no social or professional consequences whatsoever for speaking or expressing oneself, instead of properly understanding that it refers to protections from state interference with speech. However, you don't need to be an expert or lawyer to understand that's wrong, as much as many individuals consistently get it wrong. In terms of the practical realities of being a lawyer, the biggest misconception that I encounter all the time is that when someone is introduced to a layperson as a criminal defense lawyer, the first question they're asked is almost always, how do you defend someone you know to be guilty? The premise of this question, that it's more difficult to defend guilty individuals, is entirely wrong. Defending factually, legally, and/or morally innocent individuals is much more of a psychological burden. It creates an investment in the files and outcomes. It keeps you up at night wondering if there was something else you could have done. You also hear an inner voice telling you that you're not adequate. Defending guilty individuals is easy. You can either try to negotiate a favorable plea deal for them, or set the case for trial and argue that the state hasn't proven their case. Just make sure that procedural rights are protected and sentences are fair. Story 5. Damascus or pattern welded steel is considered to be better than regular steel. It improves the quality of the steel, giving the blade a unique, layered effect. In the early days of steel production, Pattern welding was the only way for a blacksmith to control the carbon content of the steel. The layered effect was a byproduct of this process. Today, pattern welding is done for aesthetic reasons. It requires skill and artistry to create a beautiful pattern. However, pattern welded steels do have some disadvantages. The multiple layers can create imperfections that can be difficult to identify during quality control. Additionally, the different alloys used may require different heat treatments. This makes it more difficult to achieve consistent results. Lastly, the time spent forging the steel can lead to grain growth and carbon loss/migration. In comparison, modern monosteels are easier to heat treat, grind, and achieve predictable results, while Damascus steel may be more visually appealing. Monosteels are better in terms of performance and durability. Overall, pattern welding is a fun and rewarding process. You can achieve unique and beautiful results. However, it's important to be aware of the limitations of pattern welded steel.